Self away. I give myself away so you can use me. Here I am, here I stand. Lord, my life is in your hands. Lord, I longing to see your desire in me. So I give myself away. Oh, I give myself away so you can use me. I give myself away. I give myself away so you can use me. Father, I give myself away tonight so that you can use me to bring a rhema word, to bring a word that is in season, to sharpen your people, to encourage their hearts, to guide their way, to protect them, empower them, build them up, motivate them, and to give them assurance that they belong to you, and that no weapon formed against them from a government, from a people, from a person shall ever prosper. For those that dwell in your shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadows of you, the Almighty. These here are your people. Cover them, protect them, guide them, guard them, and put them on a mountain so that what was just spoken to us moments ago will go beyond these walls, into the hearts and to the lives of your people that need to know the truth so that this truth can set them free, so that they can live their life believing in you, the one true God, Yah, to know that they are kings and queens, princesses and princes, chosen by you before the foundation of time, called by you to do incredible things. So again tonight, Lord, I pray that you would take my mouth, take my heart, take my desires, take whatever it is that I had planned, and that you would use it for your glory, and that it would be a word that is in season, a word that will not return void, but will go out and accomplish everything that you have set forth it to do. And when all is said and done, you and you alone will receive all the glory, the honor, and praise. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I'm learning. Go ahead and have a seat. I'm learning. If I can say this, I'm maybe a newly converted Gentile over. So I told Pops over here that, what are some things that I need to know? And he said, brother, relax. And so I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to relax. I want to just be an open vessel, not only to speak, but for you to speak and to ask me questions and stuff at the end. I want to ask this before I even begin, and I want you to feel comfortable enough. Raise your hand while our sister was up here sharing that truth. If some of you felt a bit uncomfortable knowing that you had a European white man sitting in your assembly while she was saying what she was saying, please raise your hand if you felt a little uncomfortable, afraid of what the truth might be doing to me sitting over here listening to it. Raise your hand. Okay. That saddens me, because it shows how much, again, that, and I understand it. But I'm saying how far as a nation we have to come, but how much work we have to do. And I hope God will allow me to do, Yah to do, to build you up as a people that you will never be ashamed or nervous about the truth of what my ancestors have done to your ancestors and what my white family is doing today to you as my black family. That is the truth. A little history about me before we begin. I grew up in southern Minnesota. I grew up out in the country, a town of about 4,000 people. There was not a African American or a black person within miles from where I grew up. The extent of the cultural diversity of St. James, Minnesota was two Mexican families, the Gallegos family and the Hernandez family. And then every year we would get between 2 and 4 foreign exchange students from someplace in Europe, mostly France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, or England. So that was the extent of the diversity that I grew up under. I grew up not in a family that would have looked out the window and saw one of you being lynched and would have cheered, but would have said, close the window and get away from there. I have an uncle, and well, today with the journey God has brought me on, I have several family members, aunts and uncles that will not even speak to me. They have blocked me from all media, and they have blocked me from their cell phones and have asked me not to humiliate them and disrespect them in my ignorance and in this journey that I am now on. So I grew up there. I was going to be a small animal vet, so I went to a 2-year school, and I fought a little bit with Yah. I radically got saved, actually, the summer before my senior year in high school. Some friends had invited me to go to this Christian outdoor concert, and so I went. I grew up religious. I grew up where we went to a Lutheran church where we talked about God, but God and everything about Him stayed in the church. See, us white folk think we're good. So God is just God is honored, I know, to have us white folk, walk with Him. I mean, I know us white folk are good people, and so God is just our buddy that we walk alongside, and He is just pleased with us. And the few things that we do bad, hey, we're human, but we're not like the rest of y'all. So it's kind of that in our culture. Growing up is, God is going to be, Yeshua sitting on His right hand, God the Father, and us white people. And we will judge the living and the dead. It really is to that point. So I radically got saved. I just remember sitting there and then hearing the voice of God, which I didn't recognize quite at that time. And the only way I can explain it is sometimes when you get up real quick, you get this little lightheadedness. And that came over me, and the next thing I know, there was like 30,000 people there. So I was like in front of the stage. I don't know how I got there. I don't remember any of that. But I remember at the time when I came about that I was on my knees with my hands up, pleading for this God to come into my life. And that radically changed me from that day. I began to read the Word of God. I began to seek Him and who He's all about and what it's all about, having a relationship at that time with what I knew was Jesus Christ. I then went to a 2-year Lutheran school to be a veterinarian, and I fought God a little bit in Him wanting me to go do something else, and finally He took my tolerance away for blood. So to this day, if somebody has some blood coming, you will probably have to pick me up on the floor. I have pleaded with Him, all right, you got your way, now give me my tolerance back so I don't look like a wuss. But He directed my steps to be a youth pastor. I'm the oldest of my family. My father and I have not really seen eye to eye my whole life. So I've journeyed a lot on my own. And after being at Waldorf College, it was just another miracle that Yah had directed me all the way to Chicago to attend Moody Bible Institute. And I was going to be a youth pastor. And I got there in January of 1994, and I didn't know anything about Chicagoland. And some of the guys on my floor invited me to attend a church on the west side of Chicago. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what the west side was compared to the north side, to the south side. There is really no east side, that's the lake. So I went with them. There were two white guys. Their majors were urban ministry. They were going to live their life ministering to black men and women in your urban inner city communities. So I hope I have permission just to speak boldly like this, or without any tiptoeing around. And if I step on your toe, I apologize right now, but that's not my intent. So I followed them. We got to the train station, and as we're heading west, every stop we took, I noticed that more and more white folk got off, and those that got on were black. And by the time we got to the last stop, myself and these two guys that I was with were the only white guys or white people on this train. And so for the second time in my life, but the first time walking, as I followed them, I looked around and I said, I'm in a ghetto. This is what they call the ghetto. The only thing I knew about ghettos or you guys is what I saw on TV. You already shared a bit about what our country does, especially our media, in representing certain people. You know how they represent you. And so I was fearful. The only other time I had ever been in a situation like this is when I was with my mom and dad and my brothers, my family. We were driving down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my mother took a wrong turn in Omaha, Nebraska, and ended us in the middle of the projects there in Omaha. And I remember my father waking up and cussing her out, saying, how did you do this? And telling us kids to get down. He did lock the doors. Don't stop for the stop sign because you're all going to run out there and take our wheels. And then the cops are going to come and put us in jail and nobody will ever see us again. So now I'm walking in that community. So we get to this church, and it's a fairly well-known church, Rock of Our Salvation, Raleigh, Washington. He's done some racial reconciliation type of stuff throughout the years. And he spoke about the destruction of stereotypes. That the destruction of it doesn't start when I refuse to give you the job when you come into my office, but it starts the moment I see you and I already make those judgments based on what I think I know instead of what I do know. And Yah had always put in my heart a sensitivity to underdogs, or to what we would call, or people like the Mexicans in my hometown. They were not really embraced. They were tolerated, but they were not embraced as one of us. We'll embrace you as long as you're few in number and you do things our way. Once you grow a little bit bigger, you'll see the true hearts of white folk come out. So that impacted me. And so on the way back from that church, it was a longer church service. I couldn't believe it. Us white folk have a church that should not last more than 60 minutes. And if it does, that pastor may not have his job the following year, because the roast is in the oven and I got things to do and places to go. Because again, remember, I'm doing God a service by coming and worshiping Him. I'm doing God a service by coming in and reading about who He is. Not that God, is the one that's my way maker. If I do good, my grandpa told me, if I follow the 10 Commandments and I do good, I will have a good life. So those of you that don't have a good life, it's because you are not following the 10 Commandments and doing what God had told you to do. It's your fault. So as we walked out, it had snowed lightly, so there was a couple of inches on the ground. And so we were walking single file in a trotted path. And my two friends were in front of me, and we're walking like this, and all of a sudden I saw 5 young black men about a block in front of me. And so guess what? My mind went straight to what I was taught growing up. And I thought, oh my gosh, are they gang members? Are they drug dealers? What are they going to do to me? But I also believe that when the word comes to us, we can allow it to be planted in our lives, or we can allow the birds to take it away, or we can allow the rocks and other things eventually to remove the word that Yah is planting into us. And so I said no. At that time, I was like, no, God, I'm not. If those were 5 white guys, I would not think that. We didn't have cell phones back then, so I couldn't dial 911, for help. So I had to endure it. And so as we were walking, they started picking up these ice chunks. And I thought, being from Minnesota, I'm a professional snowball fight man. Using ice chunks is not a friendly battle. Whoever is on the other end of those ice chunks probably won't be your good friend when you're done with your snowball fight. But they picked up these ice chunks, and again, these 2 friends of mine had been attending this church, one for about 3 or 4 years, because he was a senior, and the other one for 2 years. I was a transfer student in. So I transferred in as a junior. So I was, like I said, brand new. This was in March of 1994, just after I had arrived to Chicago in January of 1994. So we're walking, and these guys, approached us and said, hey, what's up, what's up? And the 2 guys in front of me were like, hey, what's up, what's up? So I was like, okay, well, that's what I have to do. So when they got to me, I said, hey, what's up? Well, it was at that moment that I realized what those ice chunks and who those ice chunks were for. They were for me. Within minutes, I found myself in the snow with a busted lip and a bloody nose and black eye and bleeding in the back of my head from the ice chunks that they smacked. Wounded spirit, confused. And the 2 guys that were with me, they were still walking. They were still walking. Until the last guy gave me a kick, and he said, welcome to racism! And they ran off. That's when my 2 friends turned around and saw me lying in the snow, bloody and beaten. That was the pivotal point that Yah used to change the whole course of my life as to where it is today. Those words from those 5 young black men, welcome to racism! And that beating is what I believe in the depths of my heart that Yah used to choose me or to call me to do what I'm doing today, 23 years later. Those 2 guys, one of them never went into the inner city, and the other one only lasted for about 2 years. Because, see, white folk will only last for about 4 years, because once we get there and you all don't do what we want you to do, or you don't give us what we think we deserve for the sacrifice we make to leave our palaces to come to your inner cities, we get up and get out. Or we move out and we commute. Well, Yeshua did not commute, so why should I? I believe they did not hear what was going on, because that was almost what I kind of consider a Saul on the road to Damascus experience. That was Yah speaking to me. And what the Lord did, yes, I went through some questions, riding on the subway back, bleeding. People were like, what happened to you? There was some anger for a moment. But I said, God, help me. Help me to understand why, or the pain behind those words and actions of those 5 young black men. I didn't know what I asked God at that moment, because I didn't know the extent of oppression and racism that lies in this country. And so when I gave Yah permission to help me understand the pain and what that was meant behind that altercation, I, representing America, or white America, the past 23 years, Yah has brought me through to find out and to learn the extent of oppression that this country has always had to keep you, black Americans, down. Until even recently. So, throughout the years, and I'll go through this quickly, I learned the purpose of drugs in the inner city. I learned, welfare, the purpose of welfare. I learned the purpose of the injustice system of the correctional facilities. I learned that these were all plots and schemes and things to destroy, even as my sister was up here speaking, the family unit, to destroy the strong man, to take the man out of the families and out of the communities, to leave you vulnerable, broken, hopeless, and helpless. All those things. But see, what happened is we had to go to different things because nothing has worked to keep you where we wanted you to be, which was slaves underneath our feet. So we have to come up with new things, and that's why today we do exactly what Pharaoh did with your ancestors. Instead of throwing your men into rivers, which we don't have, we use guns to kill you because your men cannot rise up from death. Not on this side of heaven. And so that has been my journey, but I've always asked God, God, I don't understand this. I know that us white men, especially white men, do not want equality with anyone, even women. We want to be the top dog. Trump is a poster child of white supremacy, white male supremacy. He has nothing for women, and he has nothing for minorities. He has nothing for anybody except for white men, white heterosexual men. And so I continued to ask God through all these years, the different things that he brought me through, the different things that he showed me, that our inner cities and your life of hardship wasn't due to your choice or your due of not following the commandments or this or that, but it was due to my family, my white side of the family, setting it up for you to remain in the position that we brought you here. That's to be slaves. We brought you here to be slaves, and we never intended you to be nothing more than a slave. We have never given you anything. Everything you do have, you fought for. And that is why if you would have remained in your place, you wouldn't see some of the things that we do to this day. But because you didn't remain in your place, you have caused us. And that is also why tonight my title of the message is Stolen, Not Taken. You were stolen, not taken. See, when somebody is taken, there may be an agreement on your side to be taken. And when you get down to it, white folk will always say, well, it was their people that gave them to us. No, we stole you. We broke laws of God and laws of land when we stole you. There was no part of you as victims that allowed yourselves to be victimized. You were not taken. You were stolen. And when we stole you, we never intended you or expected you or wanted you to rise up beyond that. So I began to ask God, though, in my spirit, I still was like, we dislike women when they want equality. My grandpa, who's no longer around, he said one of the things that caused America to go down was the day that we allowed women to have their rights. The day that women began to have their rights was the day that America started going down. That's how deep that white supremacy and control is. But I said, okay, we dislike women's rights. We dislike, let's say, Mexicans and other, minority groups. But we hate you. We hate you, blacks. We hate you. And I said, why? Why do we dislike other minority groups, but we hate you? And I would say about a year ago, the revelation of Yah came into my spirit. And he said, that's because they're my chosen people. And that is what has opened my eyes to know that you are his chosen people. You are the ones that the word talks about, that were put on slave ships in Deuteronomy 28, carried over to a land that was not your own, to where a language was spoken that you did not know, where you were stripped of everything about you, your names, your heritage. Why did they make these men get naked? Because it takes away all their dignity. When you stand naked before somebody, you are completely exposed. Your dignity, your value is stomped on. They do that in the prison systems all the time. They walk up to those. I was a chaplain at Cook County Jail for about 16 years. And they called them black leather glove guys. And they would walk up there and ransack their jail cells, rip up their family pictures, destroy their dignity, would strip them naked, and then walk them through the prison down to like the gym and have them stand naked, where dogs would sniff the insides and the outsides of these men, destroying their dignity, their value as humans. But with that, tonight, there's also the promise of Deuteronomy 7:6. For thou art a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God chose you to be his people, his treasured possession from all the nations on the face of the earth. That is why you are so hated, not even just by white America, but by the world. You are the remnant of his chosen people. And that my life now, God, and that's where I'm switching from God to Yah and from Jesus Christ to Yeshua. But now I understand when he first brought me also into the inner city, he told me that you will be like my Joshua. Don't be afraid of them. And I'm going to be honest with you. The first thing I was afraid of was the guys out on the street. And he said, don't be afraid of them. No one will ever be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. But see, now I understand the fullness of what Yah spoke to me back in 1995, shortly after I had that incident. Them were not the guys out on the street. Them are my ancestors. Them are my people. Them are the ones he's saying I do not need to be afraid of. That he will allow me to be used as a vessel, to be a mouthpiece, to speak truth from the other side, from your enemy's side, the truth of who you are. See, it's one thing when you tell each other we're chosen. You know, and somebody asks, well, there's been black brothers and sisters that have been saying this for years, and so why all of a sudden now this white man comes and says it? The reason why I believe it's a little different, not because I'm all that in a bag of chips, as we say, but it's one thing when everybody's sitting in the pit to encourage each other in the pit that we are gods and we're going to get out of this pit. But it's something when a master who put you in the pit looks down and says, I want you all to know that you really are God's chosen people. And you're coming up out of this. There's the difference. The only person that would reveal that to somebody on that side of the family that hates you would be Yah. That's why my family now despises me. They think I'm lost it. They think I'm crazy. Sometimes at first I thought I was crazy, but I know the voice of my God. I know the voice of the master that I serve. I know his voice, and it answers so many questions to why you, as my black family, are suffering so much. It's because you're his. And so now I'm diving into learning more and more and more so I can be an educated white Gentile to run and out on the street. See, our guys, you know that President Trump sent in the FBI to now infiltrate our inner cities. I live in an inner city. I live basically in the same community that I was beaten up in. I live there purposefully because I said, Lord, if I'm going to understand the plight or the hardship of a group of people, then I must dwell amongst them. Even though I don't take the biggest hit, I can see the hits you take. So then I can run back and say, no, they're not lazy. No, they're not no goods. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. Our system has set them up to fail, and the wisdom and all the smarts and the intelligence, we've stole it from them. And we've given credit to us. We've taken the credit for it. But I just did a live posting to say that same foolishness is going to cause my people to fail. Because, see, my people are fooled to think you're stupid. When, actually, we're the ones that are pretty stupid. And so, when this message begins to hit those streets, that's why when I see my guys selling drugs out on the streets, I do not see them as drug dealers. I see them as businessmen. I see them as potential business owners. I see them as potential teachers and lawyers in a system that will recognize their value and give them their identity. See, that's why, you know, a lot of my pastor and stuff who's older generation, he has a little less tolerance for the guys out on the street. But I try to explain to him from my point of view that these guys out on the street are a couple generations in more oppression and hopelessness than your generation was. Your generation still had some fight in it. Your generation still had some zeal. Your generation still had some knowledge of who you were. But over the years and the generations, that fight, that knowledge has dissipated. And the lies that we have put on, they're no good. They are worthless. They need to be locked up. Trump is sending the FBI in just to reap the cotton. See, we don't have cotton fields where you work anymore, so we put you in our prison systems. Why is it that in Chicago public schools, and I work in an inner city school, right now we're barely able to get $4,500 a student for a year, but I put that same student in Cook County Jail or at the Juvenile Detention Center, and you're talking $18,000 to $30,000 a year. Why? Because you as young men are more valuable in our prison system than you are out in the world. That's because we fooled ourselves to think you are stupid. Wild animals, incapable of doing anything. Where that same foolishness, when you rise up, is going to take us down. Look at Trump. I know the Bible says don't call somebody a fool unless they're a fool, but I think Yah is looking down and saying that man is a fool. He is a fool. But I knew he was going to get elected. Because Pharaoh has to be on the throne for Pharaoh to come down. Your 400 years are right around the corner. Little discrepancy between 1619 or 1620. Add 400 years to that. 2019, 2020. Pharaoh, the poster child of white supremacy, is on the throne. If it was a black man on the throne, white America would say, see, stupid black man got us in this predicament. If it was a woman like Hillary, they would say, see, the white man would say, that controls the system, it was a stupid woman that brought us down. What are they going to do now? One of two options. Either they're going to repent or they're going to embrace destruction because they're coming down. And that's why I believe in short years to come, America is not going to be the way it is. white America is coming down. And Yah, in his, maybe I can say this, in his mercy, is doing everything to allow my white family to repent. When you watch a video of an officer shooting a man down or putting 7 bullets in his body, and their reaction is, well, I'm not going to make no judgments until I hear the full story. When you see on my Facebook page, I also showed an elderly black lady that was sitting in a reserved seat. But she sat, it looked like it was at maybe some bus station or train station, but it said that she sat there for years. These 2 white officers came up, and before it was over with, they had that woman smashed on the ground, bleeding from the head, handcuffed. Doesn't matter if you're young, middle-aged, or old. We do not value you. And that is why I tell, those that are on my Facebook page, I no longer want you to be on the defense. You take the offense. You've been on the defense long enough to defend who you are. You don't need to do that no more. You start being on the offense. What do I mean by that? I'm putting out a shirt. I really believe, Yeshua was not like my skin. If he was, he would have been like a fly in a glass of milk when he ran over to Egypt to hide. I mean, come on. Sometimes we got to have some common sense. But see, we don't even think that far. We don't even think that far. Just lost my train of thought right there. See, I'm not even thinking. Oh, and it's promoting, thank you, it's promoting that Yeshua was black. And so I got a lot of responses to say, put scripture in there so we can defend. And I said, no, I don't want you to do this no more. I want you to ask a white person. Show me in the Word where it tells me or you that the person of Yeshua looked the way that we've been taught for him to look for 400 years. See, they're going to right away tell you to prove to us that you're right. And then when we don't care anyway, because we don't value anything you have to say, I want you to make us prove what we've taught you is right. And watch us walk away by saying this, well, color don't matter, no way. Right, because we're on the losing end this time. And if it didn't matter, you would never come up to us in the first place and say, well, first of all, it's not Yeshua, it's Jesus. That is my goal, is to raise up my young people out on the streets to no longer defend why they're doing what they're doing. We know why they're doing what they're doing. They live in a society that doesn't value them. They live in a society that wants them dead. They live in a society where they're more valuable behind bars than they are anyplace else. But what also scares me is that my black family in the inner city is agreeing with this mindset. We're calling the police to come in to shoot so-and-so's neighbor or get rid of their son, but eventually it's going to be my son. Because those who are coming in our neighborhoods don't care about our kids. They don't care about our men. We can't call on Pharaoh to help us. Your ancestors didn't call Pharaoh to come into your homes to help you because you knew they were the enemy. Anything associated with the government is your enemy. And the reason why I know that, because when you ain't around, nobody knows my heart. Nobody knows that at Cook County Jail, they used to call me white chocolate. But they don't know where I really stand. And I like that. Because see, I can sit in those meetings when you walk out and you may be thinking, oh, they seem like some pretty okay, cool white folks. Until you leave. And they don't know where I stand. And all of a sudden you start hearing things that would... See, and that's how Yah set it up. White folk that want to walk around and say, I'm not racist, which you get a lot of them in the church. Paula White, I call her out all the time. Paula White, you should have been the first person standing somewhere after the first young black man got shot down for no reason. You with majority of blacks in your congregation, where are you? She don't care about you. She cares about what you give because she knows you as blacks historically support the pastor. I was just talking to Pops and him the other day. White pastors, we don't view white pastors like that. Look, if a white pastor in my church bought a brand new car, we would say, he's making too much money. I'll give him my used car. That's how we view. Maybe not in the white Pentecostal churches, but in the evangelical, the Baptist churches and stuff, the Lutheran. Oh, no way. You watch a pastor go and buy a brand new car? People in that congregation will be like, what? Even though they're driving a brand new car. Because a pastor is not a real job. You know, he's somebody that's... So they know how to get... If she cared about you, she'd been the first person to stand up and make a movement to stop it. But she's nowhere to be found. Nowhere. She's only one of many. So... I explain it also like this, and I'm probably not going into the Bible a whole lot, but sometimes truth is truth, and I like to use these examples and what Yah has shown me to be able to give you all some inside information, not that you haven't had it, but at least if I can speak something, you can say to yourself, see, I knew we weren't crazy as a group of people. I knew things were set up for our destruction. After a while, you have to start thinking, are we crazy? Are we really making this stuff up? Is racism really around? I mean, sometimes we can get into your head so much that you start doubting yourself. But see, this is why you get the officers that are shot, or the young black men that are shot down, and then a white young man that goes in and blows up, a building is taken away in handcuffs and given Burger King. See, as blacks, 9 out of 10 of you are born animals. Crazy lunatics. 1 out of 10 of you escaped that and became good. Us white folk, 9 of us are born good. 1 of us, somebody wasn't there in his life or her life. Somebody missed guiding them. So they're a little crazy, but with some help, they'll be okay. That's why when we see a black man, we shoot you because 9 out of 10, you a crazy lunatic. That's why we see a white person, 1 out of 10, they're a crazy lunatic. So we'll take down the white man nicely, but we'll shoot you because of what we view you as. So I've really been asking Yah, and I really am believing that you as a congregation stuff here are kind of the beginning of a new season for me. That I can go and begin to speak some truth. Not truth that you don't already know, but truth to confirm what you do know. That you are. I know you are God's chosen people. I know you are. I doubted it for a week when my pastor, and I go to a Kojic church. It's not real traditional anymore. I mean, it's not traditional when I come in with earrings and this and that. I know I'm a little out there, but I really felt Yah at one point just said, I created you for who you are, and when people get to know you, they're going to love you for your heart, not for this or for that. But, if I have to go somewhere and take them out, I'll do that. These are not my identity. But he was saying, be careful. That's this and this and that. And so because he's my pastor and he's been ministering for 30 years, and he's almost 60, I was like, wow, okay, maybe I need to listen. Well, that was a Sunday. On Monday, I get a call from a lady in Atlanta that confirmed and affirmed that exactly what Yah has put in my spirit and what he has showed me about you is true. So that is my journey now, is to go and be used by him. And what is happening is we have stolen your identity. That's why our kids out on the streets are doing what they're doing. That's why even, our black family in places where you are look like things are in chaos. But it's because we've stolen your identity. So now you have individuals that are putting their identity in money, putting their identity in popularity, putting their identity in clothing, putting their identity in sports. Because before I got saved, my identity was kind of in my whiteness. I was a Norwegian. Mi bestemor fra Norge, så jeg kan snakke litt norsk også, ja. That's a little bit of Norwegian. I said that my grandmother was from Norway, mi bestemor. And so now she spoke a little bit of Norwegian, so now I can speak a little bit of Norwegian. But after I got saved, my identity began to change. It wasn't based on my family anymore. It wasn't based on the surroundings of a small town. Yep, I'm from a small town. You know, you got folk that gloat in that. I'm from a small town, hard-working farmers. You know, my identity is in Yeshua, is in Yah. But the reality is, part of who I am today is also knowing my heritage, good and bad. My father and my grandfather and my uncles are prideful, arrogant men, and even before I became a follower, at a young age, I remember my uncle. We were watching TV, and Stevie Wonder was on. And they were like, my uncle was like, oh, that's stupid, blunk, 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 won't even repeat it, you know, this, that. And as a child, I sat there saying, wait a minute, you're degrading a blind man that can do more than you can do with all your eyesight. What? Where does that come from? You have Trump and his followers that want to degrade Obamacare, but they can't come up with nothing. That's like you and I going to an art class, and I degrade your picture of a tree, and then you look at my pape, and I don't have nothing on it. But see, that's who we are. And so I broke from that identity. But what I realized is until these young men and women underneath us understand their identity, when they know they're not cursed, when they know they're not stupid, when they know they're not they're worthless, when they know that they are actually not the cursed but the chosen people of God, imagine what that starts to do in their minds. I know you're selling drugs right now, young man, but let me tell you who you really are. Let me tell you who you really are. Their ears and their hearts are itching for somebody to drive by them. You know, I get upset with some of the Baptist churches and the different churches that once a year during the summer, and please forgive me again if I'm stepping on toes. I don't mean to make judgment calls. Think they mean well, but it bothers me. And it doesn't bother me from my perspective per se, but it bothers me from when I speak to the guys out on the streets on how they see it. But you get people from a church one Sunday or one Saturday out of a summer when it's warm, get their brand new shirts that were from so-and-so church, you know, and they grab their Bibles and they go out on the streets and they go up to the guys that normally they drive around them because they're afraid of them. But on this Sunday, they pray up, oh God, protect us from these bad people. Don't let us get shot. Don't let them do this to us. And then they go out there and say, you know, God loves you, but you got to change. You got to stop selling drugs. You got to stop doing that. You need to come to Jesus. You know, no wonder why they run from the church. What if you went out there every week and brought them some water on a hot day while they're working the streets? Yeah, they might be doing drugs, but oh well, bring them some water and say, you know, I don't understand exactly why you're doing what you're doing, but I'm going to believe one day you will be greater than what you're doing now. Here's some water. I told a young man on the street one time, Q-tip, I said, Q-tip, man. Well, when they would do a drug action, they would always say, Rev, get away. So I would walk over. They would do their action because they didn't want me to get in trouble. And then when they're done, they'd come back. So one day when I came back, you know, I would just step a little bit away. I said, Q-tip. I said, man, I just really want you to stop selling drugs. You need to stop selling drugs. You know, I had a little relationship with him already. Q-tip grabbed me by the shirt and he put me up against the wall. He says, you want me to stop selling drugs? Then come here. He led me to his house. Walked into his house with his mother on the sofa, out. Cocaine, heroin, I don't know. Sitting at the table was his 2-year-old sister in diapers crying because she was hungry. Mom must have started to feed her, but then whatever caught up and she fell out. And then maybe a 4 or 5-year-old came running out of the bedroom. He opened up the refrigerator and there was nothing in there. He said, "I'll stop selling drugs when you come and give me the money or the food to feed my 2 brothers and sisters." At that moment, I decided never again will I tell somebody to stop doing something unless I have the means to provide for them what their actions are doing at that point. That's my philosophy with all people. You know, how can we judge individuals that are generations away from their identity in Yah? How can we judge somebody, even if they're in lifestyles? I know sometimes this gets to be some treacherous water, but how do we judge anybody when they haven't had, first of all, a relationship with Yah? And then I have young kids. I'm a restorative practices coach. And my philosophy and what I'm doing with some of the Chicago public schools is to train the staff to no longer just punish kids. I had a young man that came late to school all the time, and so the school I was involved in at that time, which was a charter school, has demerits. They stand out in the middle of the hallway, and if kids come not dressed appropriately, or if the kids come a few minutes late, or if the kids don't do this or don't do that, they write their names down, demerit, 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 demerit. And so I went to the principal one day because I started building relationships. I didn't give demerits. They told me, you know, you might not have a job here. And I said, well, if I wanted to be a correctional facility officer, I would have been in a correctional facility. But I'm in a school where I'm an educator, where I want to inspire my kids to learn and not punish them so that they end up in a correctional facility. And so I mentioned to him that this one young kid that they always give demerits to, that he comes late because he drops off 2 siblings before he comes to school. He takes a train and a bus to drop the one off, a bus to drop the other one off, a bus back to the train to get to the stop nearest to the school and walks 3 blocks. He leaves the house by 4:30 to 4:45 a.m. He comes to school 5 minutes late, and then you demerit him. He said, well, they're not going to get a job if they come late. And I said, the kid's not going to make it to a job when we punish him before he even gets there. I said, this man would be a great employee. He already knows how to take care of responsibility. So my philosophy is to work with the kids. I'm not saying there's not a need for a law, but instead of automatically punishing people, we need to sit down and understand, is it coming from rebellion, or is it coming from a lack of knowledge, or is it coming from a hardship? And we work. You know, like I said, I got young people. I have a 3rd grader that came to me, and his father was shot when he was in the car, killed. And then his cousin, due to the stress, hung himself. 3rd grade. Would I ever think that this young man will ever be, quote unquote, normal? He experienced more hardship at the age of 7, 8 than I have in my 45 years. I'm getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling partly because I know that I serve Yah that can deliver us. But I also know that I serve people that are broken and wounded. And some wounding will never be healed. Some wounding. I have a young man that smokes weed. I'm not an advocate for it. But when I was thinking about that, I believe Yah spoke to me and said, I'll take care of that after I work in his heart. Right now, what you see as a shame on him is actually something I'm allowing because it's controlling his anger from all the hurt and pain. But if you take that away now, he may use the gun that's sitting at his home to take out somebody's life that has hurt him. And then he'll end in prison. So let me work in him. I'm transforming him little by little to eventually Paul will not need the substance. He's in my hands. I'm faithful. You love him. You support him. You encourage him. You give him truth. You tell him who he is. You tell him what I can do in his life. You give him the hope that he's lacking, that he has to resort to in the marijuana just to keep him alive. I know sometimes that sounds like I'm treading a little bit of, but after 23 years of living in the lives of these young people, seeing how broken they are, and see, when I came into the inner city, I knew I had a lot to learn. Sometimes when you are already in your culture and you get older, you maybe don't sit down with the kids. Sometimes, my parents don't realize that me growing up was very different from them growing up. And until they come and sit down with me and hear my heart and my struggles and my pain, their compassion is not there. They think it's excuses. And so when I know I was different and I knew I had to learn, I sat down with these kids and I share with them and I talk to them and now they come running to my office. Mr. Stevens, you need to talk to my friend. They want to commit suicide, Mr. Stevens. And I told them if they come up to Mr. Stevens, his room is filled with peace. That's not my peace. That's the peace of Yah that I serve. Mr. Stevens, I don't want to be in the lunchroom. I just need some peace, Mr. Stevens. Can I just come and sit in your office and eat my lunch, Mr. Stevens? I have kids all day. One little kid came in, and he had his head down, and he said, "Yeah, Mr. Stevens." I said, "What's wrong, James?" He's like, "Mr. Stevens," he says, "you don't like me." I said, "James, what do you mean I don't like you?" "You don't like me. I'm not your favorite. You don't like me." I said, "James," "come here. This is between me and you." I said, "First of all, I like all the kids in this school. But I said, the secret is you're one of my favorite." I said, "Why do you think you're up here with lunch with me all the time?" He got this big smile. He put his head up and he said, "Thank you, Mr. Stevens." And he ran off and went to class. This was a kid that was out of control 3 months prior to that. Now was a kid that the mom and dad came in and said, "What has happened to our son? He's changed." And he comes home and he says, "Mr. Stevens loves me. I'm one of his favorite." It's that power. Your identities has been stolen. The kids and the young people and those that are not aware of the truth, it's been stolen. Hasn't been taken. My ancestors stole it from you. You had no part in giving up or freely giving away your identity. It was stolen from you. And now that it's stolen, we have to have that mindset to look at others in their lostedness, if that's a word. That it's our job to go and speak. God is Yeshua and Yah, he's turning it up now. I'm telling you, he's pouring out the Spirit and he's awakening. There were 2 white prophets or prophetess that I heard about from this Judy Stewart. She's a lady that saw my first video, called me, and her and I talk almost weekly. Her and thousands of others have been praying for me in the ministry because Yah told her, "This is the man you've all been praying for." And her cousin is Carol Robertson, that was killed in the Alabama church, Birmingham, Alabama church, when it was bombed. And so that calling went from Carol Robertson to Judy. And so she told me that there were these two white prophets back in the 50s and the 60s prophesied that the greatest revival would hit the United States, and it was going to hit the black African Americans. I know what revival that is. Awakening to who you really are. That you are God's chosen people. You are not cursed as we, white America, has put in your head. Because see, when we know that you find out who you really are, we're in trouble. As long as we can keep you down and keep you fooled, we'll be on top. But when you recognize and when Yeshua and Yah begins to open the eyes, I'm telling you what, we in trouble. But what they don't realize is if you were as bad as we made you out to be, I wouldn't be living in the inner city for 23 years. I would have been dead within the first day. You would have saw me hanging from a tree. And what saddens me is that white racism isn't based on ignorance. If it was, my family would all be non-racists, if you want to put it that way. It's not based off of ignorance. There's ignorance in there, but our hatred towards you is not based off of ignorance. Fear and denial. And we don't even know why, but I know why. Because deep down inside, that spirit in us recognizes there's something unique about these people. There's something extraordinary about these people. And we know it in the only areas we've allowed you as a group of people to succeed. Entertainment, sports, and music. And when we see the talent there, you know we have to think deep down inside, I bet you it's other places too. And now that all these movies are coming out, see, Yah's behind all those movies. He's getting those movies out. That the truth, and that's why I say when white America comes down here in these next years, it's because of our own foolishness. We have fooled so much that we fooled ourselves, not recognizing who you are. So your identity, you as a group of people, you were stolen, not taken. Your ancestors had no part in trading you to my people. We stole you. We took you. We purposefully have done that. But I want you to be encouraged and know that your deliverance is nigh. Your oppression is coming to an end. You are going to receive the promise of your God. He has not failed you. He has not failed you. He has not forsaken you. He has not forgotten about you. It's coming. And I want you to prepare yourselves for that. I want you to go out there and prepare those around you who are still unaware of who they are. I don't care what they're doing right now. We serve a Most High. We serve a Most High that can raise up a Moses, keep him safe. We serve a Most High that can take Joseph and put him from a prison all the way up to the top. So if that same Most High can do all those things, that same Most High can infiltrate our inner cities and transform the lives of those right now that do not know who they are. I'm long-winded, and I apologize for that. But I thank you for your time, and I know it's getting a little late, but I would be more than happy. Pops, are we still, any questions? And I really say this, don't hold back any question. I'm not offended. After the Lord brought me through that beating, He brought me to Nehemiah. And one of the things Nehemiah did was this. He said, Father, forgive me and my ancestors for our disobedience in leaving Jerusalem and the wall in disgrace. I said, Father, forgive me and my ancestors for what we have done to leave my black brothers and sisters in a state of shame and disgrace. For what we have done in stealing your identity, in stealing from you who you are. And that's why I've been set free. So when you were up here sharing, that truth hurt me. It did not offend me. If anybody says they're not racist, but they're offended because of something you said, then they still have not worked it out. And they still have issues in there. I always tell white folk, you want my black brothers and sisters to be concerned about your feelings when they're dying daily in the hands of us? And you're concerned about your feelings getting hurt because they offended you? You're not there. So, questions. What's my motivation? I have to say, Yah has placed that in me. I can't stop. But my motivation, my reward, which motivates me here on a level like this, is seeing your faces when I begin to talk, lighten up a little bit. Seeing my brothers and those guys out on the street when I come over to give them a can of pop or give them some water, say, hey, it's Rav. To see that victory is happening with Yah allowing me to be a confirmer of what's already been spoken to you. I got an email from a Muslim man that said that you are the man that Muhammad talked about. That Muhammad said that there would be a European white man that would see the truth and would go and speak it out and would not fear his own people. I don't know for sure if that's me or not. I don't care. But that motivates me to say, and this is the thing that is ironic to me, and I was telling Pops this. There's a book out there called International Jew. And there was a man back in the 1920s that spent at least $2 million to prove that the Jews of today, that we know them as, are fake. And I told Pops this, I was on the plane. And I saw some Jewish people sitting there, and they took everything for me to not walk by and say, y'all fake. Look, I'm saved. I got love in my heart, but I'm still got some of that little in me. I ain't fully delivered yet. But I want to be like, y'all fake, y'all fake, y'all fake. But that's my motivation. So this book that was written, this man despised the Jews. And he actually knew Hitler a bit. Hitler mentioned this man in one of his books. See, I believe Hitler knew that they were fake Jews. Even though white America makes him out to be this horrible man, and I'm not agreeing with the things that he did, but the man had wisdom. And he knew those Jews were fake. And to a point, they were reaping what they sowed. You see what I'm saying? But see, this European American man back in the 1920s knew that America was supporting Israel and those Jews because it's all about money. So he wrote this book and did all this research. $2 million he spent back in the 1920s. And the government stepped in and said, if you publish it, we won't allow you, but if you do, we'll tear your company down. That was Henry Ford. Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford is my great-great-uncle. I just found that out, this book, this last week. And so I talked to Pops because my mind is spinning like, wow, is there a correlation? I know that he probably wasn't I know there's some racial issues with him, but I believe back in the day he did treat blacks, or paid them, I heard, almost equal than everybody else. But, am I called to help carry that mantle? What an honor.
All right, so I guess the commonality that we both share is I grew up thinking that Jesus Yeshua was Michelangelo's nephew, the guy on the fan. I'm pretty sure you thought the same thing. So when you found out that Yeshua was black, what was your first reaction?
I don't know if I had a first reaction. I'm in the... Maybe I go back here. Can I put it this way? I don't know if I can put it in words, but I'm going to be really, really honest and open with you all right now. Because this is the depth that's in us. And this just happened to me today in the hotel room. I told you I have struggled with saying Yeshua and Yah. Partly because you, as my black brothers and sisters in the Hebrew church, have been the ones instructing me about that. And today, I was looking up some words and I'm looking up some stuff, but anyways, it came to a web page about Yeshua. And when I looked at it, it was white Jews. And they had Yeshua, they had Yah. And I had no problem with Yeshua and Yah. Because it was some white people that were calling him Yeshua and Yah. And I heard Yah speak to my heart and say, remember when you went to Israel, you had no problem saying Yeshua and Yah. So deep down inside me, there's still elements that have been taught that you as blacks are not necessarily the wisest, smartest people around. And I had to repent. Because I want him to tear and reveal everything in me that will hinder me. So it was an initial response. I don't know if that little story right now would clarify how that is. That I could allow some white fake Jews say Yeshua and Yah and embrace it. But Pops and others say Yeshua and Yah. And I didn't challenge you, but I challenged you because I challenged because I wanted that information to get into my spirit in why it's not Jesus. Because I'm like, okay, well, if I'm Dana, but if I go to Norway, I'm called Danib or something like that. You know, okay, if it's Joseph, I was talking with Joseph, he's Joseph, but if you go to Mexico, they'll pronounce it as Jose. It's the same thing, so what about Jesus? And then you broke it down to me, and I understood it. But I realized the thing that was really blocking it was that deep down side issue that it was coming from you and not from a white person who I trusted that has the wisdom and the truth to direct me and steer me in the right way. So after that webpage and that came up, I realized the hindrance, because I had no problem saying it when I was in Israel, when I was surrounded by all the white Jews. It's deep inside us how it's been. And that's why it can't just be taught. It's beyond what I've been taught. And that's why, again, this stuff just reassures me over and over that you are his chosen people.
I know you go into the inner cities and speak to us black people, but how much resistance do you get when you try to, or if you do, speak to your people about who we really are?
I have not spoken to them greatly about who you really are. Because I have been kicked out of the churches for defending who you are just on a level of racism. 2 churches no longer support me in southern Minnesota because they said, when the one church got upset with me because I supported President Obama and I gave him honor. I said, it's not about me supporting the things he's doing. I'm saying I did, but I'm saying it's not even about that. It's that this black man gave hope to my young men that they can achieve. And one of the churches told me, well, that you're not a missionary for Jesus, you're a missionary for President Obama. Why don't you become a guru for him? Maybe you can be on his payroll. I haven't even gotten to this point yet because most of the white people on my Facebook page, friends and all of them, have blocked me just because of my live videos, which call you chosen, but haven't gone into the depth of where I am now. Because I feel like right now, it's a waste of time to try to convince the master that their slaves are valuable. Right now, I want to tell the slaves, you're valuable. And prepare you for your exodus. And during your exodus, if they will not value you when they see one of you gunned down for no reason, they're not going to listen to anything I have to say beyond that. So let them die in their bias, hatred, and ignorance. So I'm going to spend my energy to empower those that need to hear who they are instead of trying to convince the mind of the slave master.
So, raised as a white individual, there comes a certain eliteness with that. So, understanding who you are now, thinking that you were God's chosen, but now knowing that you're in fact a Gentile, what are some of your internal struggles?
You know what? I believe that I don't believe I struggled with that because I have been so embraced by you in the physical realm. I'm so grateful that I know who you are. So when that day comes, I'll be embraced and protected. But, and that sounds very selfish. It's like I have the best of both worlds. I do. My life is seasoned because of y'all. But then I don't face the hardships you face. I face some of them. I get pulled over a lot by cops, thinking that I'm there to buy drugs. And I get kind of smart with them, and I always think, man, if I was a black man, I would have been dead by now. But on a spiritual side, oh gosh, I wrote down. Here it is. I was making dinner the other night. It's been a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. I was making dinner. And I know when Yah says, okay, stop, come and talk to me. I used to be the person that degraded me all the time because I wasn't sitting and reading my Bible every single day. I'm just being human with y'all. I love him. But to sit there and say that I spend 45 minutes, an hour every day in his word and this and that, I don't. There's no excuse for that, but I don't. But when I hear him tell me I need to talk to you, I don't care what I'm doing. So I went upstairs. And I'm not this person that necessarily just believes in bopping, into a scripture. But that night, I actually didn't go to the Old Testament growing up. After I got saved, I did not read the Old Testament very much because I was afraid of the God of the Old Testament. I was really afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him anymore. But he brought me to Psalm 106. And he said, praise the Lord, oh give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Who can utter the mighty acts of the Lord? Who can declare his praise? Blessed are those who keep justice, and he who does righteousness at all times. Remember me, O Lord, with the favor you have toward your people. Oh, visit me with your salvation, that I may see the benefit of your chosen ones, that I may rejoice in the gladness of your nation, that I may glory with your inheritance. Yah spoke to me and said, you have defended justice, and you try to live out righteousness, and you have recognized who my people are, and you have recognized my nation. Therefore, when I bestow upon them the blessings that are about to come, you will inherit it as well. Physical realm, I was cool with it because you have embraced me. On the side of Yah, He's promised me. He took me straight to this scripture. And He said, because you recognize who my people are and you fought for justice for my people and you try to live out righteousness, I will remember you when I bestow my blessings upon my chosen. You will inherit as well. That's powerful that God would accept us white folk. Oof. Okay.
Two questions. One, do you have an organization that you work with to like organization that you work with that kind of is multi-state or, just kind of spans, so this is a consistent work in more than one place, or you just centered in Chicago? And then two, did you say that you found the truth by just in communication with Yah, or did you actually study and say, oh, that's them, those are actually Hebrews, we have them here today? Like, did you do that path, or did you just in prayer come up with something and then back up and find the truth?
That way. I always had in my spirit a lack of understanding why we as white Europeans hate you as blacks so much. And so that was always a cry out to God or Yah for an answer. And all of a sudden he dropped in my spirit. That's because those are my chosen people. And when that first dropped, I thought I was going crazy. And then he put people in my path that has directed me to Scripture. I'll be honest, I wish I was a studier. My ADHD and my lack to study, I don't know how, it's only by God's grace that I am passing grad school. When I sit down and read a book, within 5 minutes, I'm thinking about what I had for lunch 5 days ago. And I have pleaded with him to help me. So I'm not a major studier. I wish I was. I'm the one that wants to be out there and doing. But you need the... So he has placed people in my lives that have done the studying and say, go here, go there, read this, read that. And that's what I'm doing. But he dropped that in my spirit, which then cleared up that question in me that I've had for years. Why do we hate you so much? Because they're my chosen people. And then he's proved it to me in Scripture. An organization, I have started up one. It's called One Love Society.love. And it's very new. My ministry was Studio 2911. I was going to build a youth center in the inner city of Chicago, and then Chicago stepped in and tore down the property that I had and fined me $35,000, which they're after me for it today. That's how dirty they were. They tore it down illegally because they said they were afraid a brick would fall off and hurt somebody in a community that's filled with drugs where you don't come to do nothing. Why do you care? You don't care about a brick falling on your head. So they tore it down several years ago, and now because they're so desperate for money, they've tore up all those research things, and they're after me for $30,000. They're threatened to fire me from Chicago Public Schools because if I owe money to the city, there's an ordinance in there that says I cannot be employed by the city. So if I remain a member of CPS this fall, it will only be by His grace. So I changed from Studio 2911, which came from Jeremiah 29:11, bringing hope, to One Love Society, where Yah has told me that love will never fail. And he showed me over the years what has my work done in the lives of the guys out on the streets, bringing them off the streets. And he said, it was your unconditional, unfailing love for them, Dana. You loved them when nobody else loved them. I had a young man that robbed me. He got out of jail. He had no place to go, and he lived with me, and then he got back into drugs, and he robbed me. He killed my Rottweiler. Came home from church one Sunday, and he said, Dana, man, they robbed us, and they killed Deborah. They killed her, man. Went upstairs and saw my Rottweiler lying in a pool of blood. And Yah spoke to me, and he said, that wasn't an outside job. That was him job. And I wasn't mean to him. I just told him, I really believe you did it. And I said, you can't live with me no more. So I gave him a computer to do some work, and I said, get your computer and all your belongings, the clothing, everything I gave him. I said, pack it all up, and I said, let me know where you want me to take you. I loved him, but I couldn't have him in my house anymore. And unfortunately, his choices and his lifestyle, I got a call about 6 months later that he had 6 bullets in his body. He no longer had use of his body from his neck down. And he had nobody else to call. When he got out of prison and he went to go to his mom's house, she had packed up and left. And that's why he ended up coming and staying with me. And I went to the hospital to visit him. Went to visit Isaiah. I didn't condemn him. A lot of people said, yeah, see, God got him back. I said, no, God didn't get him. His choices brought him to that place. And because he was so hopeless, I got a call from the hospital about 6 months later that he had died. And nobody was there to claim his body. So his body was taken to the Cook County morgue, and sometimes they lay in there for years and years and years until they'll take him out and put a mass grave. There's thousands of bodies that are not claimed. Sometimes they're stacked 6 on top of each other. And that's where Isaiah ended up going, and I don't know where they ended up disposing of his body. But Yah really spoke to me and said what transformed the lives of the kids you were in was your unconditional love for them. Even when they did you wrong, you still loved them in spite of. And that's why OneLoveSociety.love is a movement where I want us to speak the truth of who you are, but do it also in a way that loves and builds them up. So I am looking for individuals that would love to join the movement. I have little T-shirts. The movement can take its own course. It could be where individuals of you join POPs and you reach out to people and you bring them and you serve them. It's not a church. It's something that joins what's already happening. So for me, my One Love is an inner city mentoring program. It's like a gang. We have a logo, we have colors, we have a handshake, we have a motto. And so when the guys join it, it's like they're joining a gang. Gangs are not bad. They're incredible institutions. They've just gotten into the hands of the enemy because those that are in the gangs don't know their true identity. So they're looking for identity, and the enemy has put their identity in a gang where they die. Look at the kids. We celebrate their death. When a kid dies, their parents and family members that would always tell them, get away from me, I'm sick and tired of what you do. But when they die, they spend thousands of dollars on T-shirts with their pictures. And they spend money on celebrating their life after they're dead. What happened if we made T-shirts of these kids and celebrated their life while they were still living? You know, I've got a bunch of guys right by my house, and early this spring as I drove through, I said, Lord, how many of these guys won't be here by the fall? 3 of them are already gone. So what happens is you hear the gunshots. I walk over there, the blood, the body's laying there, tears. Then you have the teddy bears and the posters and the candles and the tears. And then you have the alcohol to take away the pain. And that young man's life and his reputation and his legacy was for what? Now the blood stain is still kind of there on the sidewalk. The candles are all broken and burnt down. The posters are all, after the rain. Everybody goes on and that person's forgotten. I want to do a movement where we take a gang like Fellowship. And so with the kids, when they're in this group, One Love, I give them an ID to carry. And with that ID, then I go to the neighborhood where they're at, and I ask them that they would give me names of some of the stores that they go to. I go to those stores and I say, I got a group of young men that are choosing to the best of their ability to stay in school, get good grades, and make positive choices. Therefore, if a young man comes in here with a photo ID that says One Love, what type of incentive will you give that young man? It takes a village to raise a child. So I'll have stores that say, man, if they come in here, we'll give them 10% off their purchase. I'll go to a Footlocker, and they might give them 15% off on their shoes as a way to say, we appreciate you for making the right choices. On the back side of the card, I put my phone number, and I put phone numbers of other men that are willing to receive a call from this kid if he gets into trouble. I don't care if you did wrong. Call us. We'll be there to defend your rights. But I want you to be honest and say, Mr. Stevens, I did wrong. But I'm going to make sure they treat you with dignity and respect. We all make mistakes. I got your back. Yes, you might have to face some issues, but I got your back. I'm going to protect you from them beating you or shooting you or hurting you. But then I'm also there to protect. And I go to the police officers and say, if you see some kids walking and your officers want to go up there and start harassing them, if they show your officers that they have this ID card, will you tell your officers, leave them alone? Just leave them alone. Or if you're doing something that you think is inappropriate or not healthy, tell them to call me on the back, and I'll come and I'll be a liaison to protect you from being blown up in the news that you shot somebody innocently, but to also protect my kids. That's part of One Love, is an inner city mentoring type of program. And it doesn't have to be inner city. It can be a bunch of kids that are doing right, to give them some type of identity. They can carry. I mean, when I give them those IDs, they walk around like, yeah, I got this ID. And then all of a sudden, other kids are coming. They want to be a part of something. That's why gangs aren't bad. It's just the actions they resulted to is bad. Not because they're bad people, but because they live in a society that has devalued them. I can't blame the kids for being a product of a society. I want to get in there and break that society devaluing of them and let them know who they are. So One Love could be a group of men at your work. One Love could be a group of ladies. And they decide, so then with One Love, every, maybe 3 months or something, we go out and we would do feed the homeless, or we would do something of a charitable type of thing, to build empathy and love and concern for others. So the movement is something like that. And see, what I want to do is one day I saw this vision that it would almost be like a sorority or a frat club, where we will have members, and this is kind of what we all stand for. But it would be tweaked amongst you guys. So how it takes formation with you will be different than where it is here. And, the south side of Chicago might be doing this, but the north side might be doing this. It might be a bunch of businessmen and women that are very wealthy that are like, hey, part of our thing is we're going to get the resources to help fund and work out some of these other programs. We cannot rely on the government to take care of kids or people they hate. So we have to rise up together. I've been keeping you here all late. Whew.
Come on, everybody, say hallelujah. 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 Streamers, we would like to thank you for being with us today. I know you have been changed. You have got some information here that is causing you to see things differently. And we thank you for spending time with us tonight. And we'd like to just say, have a blessed evening and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.